Hello and welcome to the Mobile GameDev Playbook. This is the podcast all about what makes a great mobile game, what is and isn't working for mobile game designers at the moment, and all the latest trends. I'm your host, Jon Jordan, and in today's podcast we are going to be talking specifically about designing, monetizing and marketing mobile shooters. So that is the topic for today. We have two experts. We have Erno Kiiski. How's it going, Erno?
It's going great. How are you, John?
Good. So Erno, regular guest, the chief game analyst at the US for GameRefinery by Vungle. So you're giving the high-level view, the trends, and also we have Jukka Hilvonen, who is the product and marketing director at Nitro Games out in Helsinki. How's it going?
It's going super well. Thank you.
Good. And you're our expert. not that Erno isn't an expert, but you're our particular expert for today's show.
Exactly.
Because yeah, so you guys have been making kind of mobile shooters for a while now. And actually, that'd be a good place to start. Do you want to give us a bit of an introduction into yourself, what you do, and a bit of a sort of potted history of Nitro and maybe some of the titles people have heard of?
Yes, so we have been focusing on the mobile shooter games for a while now, as you said, for the past 3 years. And our past most successful titles have been first-person shooter called Heroes of Warland. That was in the stores a while ago, and we decided to remove it because we wanted to focus on the new things. And right now we have many ongoing projects which are still quite in early phase, but actually just recently we officially soft launched our newest title called Nerf Battle Arena, which is obviously Nerf with the Nerf IP and targeted towards a little bit younger audience than the traditional shooters.
Yeah, an interesting title, I guess. Not so much blood in that one, but
yeah.
playing into the basic sort of gameplay ideas there. So good. I mean, how would you say? How would you sort of define what a particularly? I guess we talk about sort of mid-core shooters. What sort of defines one, and how do you sort of see the market between? I mean, I guess we don't really. I mean, maybe sort of Nerf is sort of the casualist of the kind of the shooter crowd. You have the very high-end sort of PUBG sort of games as well. How do you sort of, from Nitro's point of view, sort of try to differentiate the market and the different sort of features you would put into different types of games?
Well, we are quite open and flexible what comes to how we define what a shooter is. It's of course it involves some kind of shooting projectiles in the game. It can be from top-down perspective or top-down camera. It can be a third-person shooter. It can be a first-person shooter. Whatever kind of a mobile game that is somehow involved shooting. And regarding the mid-core questions or how we would define a mid-core shooter game is obviously skill-based games. So you need actually be able to shoot other players or the enemies if it's a single-player shooter, and you need to be able to master some kind of gameplay elements within the game. So I think that's the definition for us.
And how do you see with the Nerf product? How does that sort of fit into, I guess, the sliding scale of how much skill is required?
Well, there definitely is skill required, but initially, like when we were thinking about the game, we want to gear it towards the younger audience and be it more like this fun and casual, like a playground type of shooter. That obviously Nerf brand is playing a big role in that, because we want to tailor the game also to the brand of the physical Nerf guns. So we want to try to match the target audience with the actual what happens in the game itself.
And what is actually the target audience for Nerf guns? Sorry, I'm not the target audience, so I don't know.
Based on our findings and experiments, it's most likely teenage boys, so 13 to 20 years old boys are the main target audience, and of course girls are also playing that, but those two are the key target audience for us.
And how does that compare to sort of the previous games you've done? Is that sort of broadly similar, or is that sort of slightly younger than some of the others?
That is definitely younger than our previous shooter titles, and that's been actually really refreshing for the game development team and myself included, because my title is product marketing director, which basically means that I'm helping the game development team to understand what is the target audience, what they are motivated by, what they want to see in the game, and also understand the current market landscape, like what kind of shooters there and what might come next in the mobile, comes to the shooters.
Probably a good opportunity now for Erno, for you to maybe give a bit of a sort of market overview. So, what have we seen in the shooter market over the last sort of year or so? Because it has been pretty busy, isn't it?
It is quite busy, but if we look at the market, of course, like the big picture of the market at the moment, it is like in terms of revenues, it's very, very top heavy. So there are those kind of like a big three titles that actually make 89% of the whole shooter market's revenue. So there's Call of Duty Mobile,
89%, is that? 89
in the US. In the US,
that is a lot. Yeah.
There's Call of Duty Mobile, there's PUBG Mobile, and Garena Free Fire. Those three are the big ones, which are generating a lot. But then below that, the rest of the market, which is of course significantly smaller, but there's a lot of then much more kind of like equal divide and much more games and so on. So if you look at, for example, just the top grossing 500, there are actually 17 shooter games. So only those three make the majority of the revenues. But then below that, below those top three, there are a lot of different variations of the shooters. So games like War Robots or Bullet Echo, it's a more casual take on a battle royale. World of Tanks, that kind of a game. So a lot of different types. But what actually is interesting, what is kind of like in common with all of those titles, comes to kind of like how those games are designed. So we have the top three shooters, which are cosmetic-based shooters, mainly cosmetic-based. But every single one of those kind of like a shooter games with a bit of a smaller audience, they have some kind of like a power progression basically built into them, and that's definitely where the market is at the moment. Because if we look at the cosmetic economies, it's really, really hard to pull off without the like absolutely massive audience that those top titles have. The insane content cadence that they push out, kind of like new skins, new cosmetics, new playable content, and so on, and so on, and so on. But then, like I said, those kind of like games outside of that, they are then focusing a little bit of, let's say, Brawl Stars model, or that type of a small kind of like, it doesn't break the game, it doesn't make it too kind of like, because it's a skill-based game, so it's of course always hard to kind of like balance the power progression together with actual fun gameplay and not make it so pay to win that it kind of like it's not fun to play. But actually, even of those top three major titles, Garena Free Fire, if you look at the downloads of that game, it actually has been getting constantly much more lower downloads than those top two titles with like the massive IPs. And if we go a bit deeper on the product side, what are they doing is that they actually have a small bit of a power progression in the actual game design. So they have those characters that you develop, and they have skins that give a slight benefits for a gameplay, as an example. But if you look at the monetization side, it has been actually monetizing much more heavily, much higher revenue per download compared to those two titles. But yeah, it's the balancing act. Some players get kind of like are not so kind of like get a little bit put off with the kind of like a pay to win mechanics or so on. But then if you have a smaller audience, you're able to monetize that audience much more highly with that kind of like some kind of a mechanic and so on. So overall, that's the kind of like where the market is at the moment. So there are the massive big titles with the mainly cosmetic economies, and then we have a lot of variation, and we are waiting for the kind of like that has been the kind of like a situation for a while, and we are waiting for kind of like some kind of a change in the market. Or at least I am personally waiting and seeing something new break and get a little bit of kind of like a piece of the pie from those three big ones. But it's super hard because they are like I said, the massive companies with the massive content cadence and so on, and I can imagine you definitely know the struggle of competing against those massive titles. So So, but I would want to still highlight one good example. Just a recent game is actually PUBG New State, which is a game from Krafton, which is naturally the developer behind the original PUBG from the PC and console titles. Actually, if you play the game, play the PUBG New State on mobile, it is actually, in terms of core gameplay, it's smoother, it plays better, it's kind of like a improved version of PUBG Mobile. But it's really, really struggling on the charge at the moment because of a couple things. Naturally, is the monetization, the content cadence, and they are nowhere near of the like the live ops framework that the Tencent has at the moment in PUBG Mobile. And then, of course, pulling players away from PUBG Mobile after it's been in the market for years and people have bought the cosmetics and so on are super hard. But yeah, it's a tough market, but really interesting market that I see a lot of potential still.
It is kind of funny because not that many years ago, where we still had this idea that people won't play mobile shooters. I mean, it seems like you sort of forget these things. But I remember certainly a few years ago when people just thought, well, no one will ever play shooters, and then sort of PUBG came in and other games as well, but PUBG mainly sort of broke that one up. And I'm amazed that it's almost 90% of the shooter market is down to those three. Obviously, they're massive games, but you kind of think. That's pretty top heavy. Okay, so I mean, a Nerf Arena type game is clearly sort of relying on its sort of branding, I suppose to some degree. But how is Nitro sort of thinking about the market it's going into? I guess particularly in the US, Nerf is I guess a more US centric brand than others. How do you try and position yourself? How do you take learnings from the things that you think are going to work, but also come up with a differentiated product that is going to work for your audience?
Well, I've been for the past year mainly focusing on in the early phase of the game development, trying to understand what is the target audience and how can we position our games in a way that they actually are different from the market that is currently live in the market. And I think the main key thing is the target audience and trying to understand what they want, and like getting to the first principles approach, like not the features specifically, but the motivations and the hopes and values of the target audience, so that because from those you can, if you're a senior developer, you can have like a million ideas how to do a feature, and so that they actually target that particular audience. So that's the first thing. And of course then after that it's the theme of the game, the mechanics of the game, and also the art style or the tone of the game, like how we position using those 4 parameters, so that there's something new in the market that could fly.
What do you think the motivations are?
Well, there's multiple different peer-reviewed models that are currently in use in the market and with different service providers. Like, of course, GameRefinery has their own, and I think the first one that, at least to my understanding, is the model used by Quantic Foundry, and all of those others are based somehow loosely on that. But there's of course the first relevant thing is that are people, or is the target audience, do they want to compete against the other players or not? Do they want to be in the same team, or do they want to compete head-to-head against other players, and some kind of combination of that? Or do they just want to enjoy the single-player experience? I think that's the first defining factor that we need to take into account. And then there are like dozens of other things, like how skill-based, or what is the mastery, like the mastery motivations, how they want to master the new titles or the new games, and what kind of skill curve the new title requires. That's obviously one thing for the shooters, especially. Then other things, but I would say that these two are like the main motivations that we look at. In addition to them, several others. But
you said it's a 3x3 arena game. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, actually, there's multiple game modes within that game already, so there's multiple ways you can have fun in the game.
Do you think, going back to sort of the the competition side, because you're a slightly younger audience, are they actually in some weird ways more competitive than older audiences? Because kids are very competitive, aren't they? I mean, how are you sort of playing with that idea?
I wouldn't say that they are possibly too competitive. I think they want to have fun in the game and collaborate within the game. So the team gameplay is obviously one thing. Of course, we have the PvP aspect in Nerf Battle Arena already. That's the key thing for us as well. But then it comes down to like how we are enabling the target audience to communicate within the game, within the gameplay session when they are going against the other team. And one specific thing that we found out is that our target audience is actually wanting to prank themselves or prank other players. And this can be done in multiple ways. Of course, it's the challenge in the mobile how you enable that in the UI because the screen is so small. But those kind of things that we have learned so far.
And I guess when it comes to the actual commercial success, how are you thinking about monetization? Because I guess you're with an existing brand, you have work with a license holder. I guess has that impacted the way you've approached that, or would you sort of always? I guess you're sort of potentially a more light touch than maybe some other games.
Yeah, definitely. We have the hybrid model, so we utilize both the advertisements and the in-app purchases, but. And on the IAP side, the cosmetics is one of the key drivers for the game, and we have put a lot of effort to have the pipeline that allows us to produce more new content constantly. And then, of course, the other thing is the Nerf blasters themselves that we are offering as an in-app purchases for the players, so that they can have their own favorite gun in the game and have fun with it.
I know something we've spoken about a lot is in the podcast over the whole year for every genre, but I guess particularly for shooters, it's been battle passes. So I'd just go to you, Jukka, and then we'll go back to Erno. But battle pass is a thing, or not?
Yep, I think it still is, until someone finds a new genre-defining game mechanic that makes the battle pass obsolete, or at least less important than it is nowadays. But yeah, definitely it is still there.
Yeah, and that's like, of course, like especially in shooters and especially in games where there's not so much those progression vectors necessarily in any other way. So that's kind of like a battle pass is still really kind of like a relevant kind of like naturally monetization, but also like I would say it even more of a like engagement and extra progression vector for the player. So you feel actually you're getting somewhere constantly. So that's why naturally kind of like a perfect fit in this specific genre. But nowadays it's all around, so used in the same manner in slots or match 3s. So
put you on the spot here. Do you have any percentages of what games you are using?
I don't have it over here, but I think I could pull it up. But I think it's like in Top Crossing 100, it's somewhere around 60-70% at the moment. Like of all the Top Crossing 100 games, no matter what the genre, something like that. I can double check it, but
it is sort of fascinating how. And I think the other thing is how quickly that has sort of come on board. Where you had, obviously sort of Fortnite, I suppose, was the one that popularized Battle Pass as a system. And then you basically saw everyone, certainly on the shooter side, and then sort of flowing into what we would have considered, genres that wouldn't fit well with battle passes have managed to, adapt it. It's such an interesting sort of combination, as you say, of retention and progression and monetization. I think that makes it sort of
64% is at the moment in Top Crossing 100.
Nice.
And like looking like 1 year back, the number was 45%. So still quite a lot of increase inside a year, even though it's been a trend for a while. So in
terms of maybe talk a bit about actually Jukka, about what stage are you at, and how you're saying from your point of view you're sort of looking at the market and trying to kind of filter that through to the design team. Are you at the stage yet of actually getting kind of users to play test, or has that happened yet? When's that going to happen? And because that can clearly, it's interesting. Developers, with mobile can just be able to sort of play test or soft launch much quicker than people, game developers have been able to do in the past. So how does that sort of play into the whole development process?
Yeah, well, actually, when we are making, or when we have a new idea or concept for the game, we actually start with the marketability testing. So we use our partners who can easily produce like a good enough marketing assets for the game that makes good enough impression, like what the game is about. Then we test it in the early funnel and see like what combination of different themes, whether it's zombie or military or modern warfare or whatever, what like resonates the best in the UA. And then only after that, when we understand our positioning, our target audience, and the potential marketability of the game, then we start to really nail down the scope of the game. And of course, we use very early playtesting with a partner like Playtest Cloud, for example, is a really good service that we are able to pinpoint our different versions of the games. So definitely those things are important in the early funnel.
Have you sort of started on that process yet, or is that still in the future?
Yes, we have started, and of course Nerf Battle Arena is already in soft launch in Canada and Finland and in Ukraine, and we have been testing that game in our technical test for a while now, and now it's in the official soft launch. So,
has there been any sort of surprising feedback that you've sort of noticed, or is that a bit too early for them?
Maybe it's a bit too early. Of course, during the prototyping and during the pre-production of Nerf Battle Arena, there's like the obvious issues in the UX and those things that we never, because we are so close in the game as a team, and we never understand like how easy you have to make the UX of the game in order for it to work to the most of the people. So those kind of things are important in the early funnel. But right now we are in a phase that we are not yet like focusing too much on the live operations. That will come later, but now we are just trying to validate the product market fit.
And Erno, you sort of talking about the pace of which the sort of big games do their live ops. Can you maybe give a bit of kind of colour to that, and just I mean, obviously those are much bigger teams than
of course,
most
like,
games have, but I think it's really fascinating to hear just how big a focus it is.
We actually did this one like bigger like shooter analysis for especially those top 3 games, and actually Fortnite was also part of the analysis. But as an example, let's say Call of Duty Mobile, they have at the same time they have about 8 to 10 limited time content gachas. So naturally, they are using various mechanics of selling their cosmetics through gacha mechanics. The most kind of like a unique skins are sold with this kind of like what we call like a box gacha mechanic, which means that you have let's say 10 items. Then you sell something for, like you pull the gacha for one time, then the item gets removed from the pool, then you have only 9 items. Then, of course, the chances to get the most rarer item gets higher, but then also the price goes higher. So that's actually the way they are monetizing their most unique cosmetics. And that's kind of like, often it requires like 8 to 10 pulls of if you want to get the like super unique skin from there, and that's the kind of like feature aimed at the very high spenders, and like unlocks the spend depth for that one. It's definitely not for everyone, but then you have those gachas, and then you have about 6 to 8 direct purchase bundles. Then you know what you get. You're gonna buy a bundle of cosmetics, and you have all of that at the same time, and about like every 2 days or something like that, there's comes a new gacha. There's multiple times a week a new one is brought to the players, and that's just the monetization part of the game. And then we have the actual like a player events or like player engagement events, where you have your new modes, new kind of like weapons, new maps and stuff like that, and all of that is supported. For example, in Call of Duty, with various task-based events. Often there are like at least 2 to 3 per week, those kind of events at the same time. So let's say a new map gets released, then there's tasks for that, and then you can, if you play that map, you get unlock those cosmetics. And we actually calculated for a 2-month period, there was actually 300 cosmetic items to be unlocked just by playing. it of course it includes kind of like a smaller ones, so avatar icons and then kind of like weapon skins, and so there's a big difference on that one. And also like weapon skins with a lower rarity, they are like copy paste of a texture on all the weapons and stuff like that. But still, the kind of like amount of content that you can unlock just by playing is super high. And then on top of that, you have the monetized content, and then of course like you have to create those limited time game modes and stuff like that. So there's that's just like a little bit of insight on that one, but it is insane. Like actually, I always knew that it is high, but when we actually did the analysis and followed them really closely for like 2 months, you actually realize that how a lot of work there has to be and how big of a team you need to support, for example, those massive games.
I guess it's particularly interesting because that's sort of the pace of mobile, and I guess because the mobile devices, we always have them and we're always looking at them every 10 seconds to see what's updated. So I guess mobile games have tended to have to be operated at the pace at which we use our mobile devices, whereas if you're on console, you probably you might play one or two sessions a day on console, so you just don't have that same sort of refresh into the content. So that's probably
and definitely. And then now, as still, of course, like competition is tougher than ever, and especially for those top shooters, and they really want to keep those players engaged, and like the ways that they go are like crazy. So
I'm probably guessing that the live ops teams on those on those titles are probably bigger than your entire team at Nitro, probably by several factors.
Yes, most likely.
So given that's the situation, how do you sort of approach that by, I guess, kind of taking the sort of best practices that realizing how you can use live ops to sort of engage your community, but obviously coming up with something that sort of fits for your sort of company and the way in which you can operate. How do you sort of find the sweet spot for you guys and the product that you're working on?
Well, I think there's a couple of points. I think the first point is that at least I don't think that we even internally here start to compete against the top dogs, the top 3 shooter titles, because they have massive armies of content production in Asia or wherever, and it's just at this point at least it doesn't make sense to even think about competing against them. But I think we already have, or we have been developing our partner studios and partner network for the past 10 years, that we have been making games, and we have really good list of studios that are able to make the content really fast and cost efficient. So that's definitely something. And of course, then thinking about the shooter genre in the more broad spectrum, there's like of course, like thinking about the target audiences, there are multiple ways of differentiating your product in the market. So let's say older males that don't like to go head to head against other players, and they like a little bit more like a little bit not as intense gameplay as in the current top shooters there is. Like a sniper game that is able to differentiate from the other sniper titles in the mobile shooter space. That's one avenue. So there's multiple ways of doing mobile shooters that is actually able to bring us revenue, and we don't need to compete against the top dogs.
I mean, do you think sort of your game, because you sort of just can't compete at that level of sort of content or maybe being in sort of top grossing monetization, do you see your game as sort of being something that people will play alongside these other games? I mean, how do you see that sort of broad idea that people are playing your game? Do you want them to play your game sort of as their number one game, or do you see the type of game you're making as being something where they'll always play a bit of Call of Duty or something, and they'll play us alongside that?
I think that there are definitely a cross section of people who both like the head-to-head intense competitive shooters, and then there is a Nerf Battle Arena, where you can go and have fun with your friends and just have a relaxing time, while at the same time competing against other players. So it's not as competitive as the other top shooters, and the use case for Nerf Battle Arena is most like the playground shooter, so to speak.
Yeah, and just to add on that, and I definitely agree that there are like definitely possibilities of finding overlap from there, and that's why I see like if you make a, like let's say modern warfare shooter and try to compete directly against Call of Duty, that's like okay, good luck. Like you have to like differentiate on the product side enough to kind of like make the gameplay and make the kind of like players' time worthy of kind of like engaging in your games. Because like I said, if you have a almost similar like a game as Call of Duty Mobile, modern warfare shooter, it's really hard to kind of like why people would play your game against that, which has a like a massive team behind it and are able to support the players in in a totally different kind of like a scale.
And how much? I mean, we've sort of mentioned it a little bit, and obviously Erno's sort of the US expert, so we focus on the US market. But you know, I mean, Nerf, I would imagine has sort of global appeal. So, how much have you looked at? You know, are you just focused on sort of North America and sort of Western Europe markets, or have you looked to kind of support other sort of geographies and territories where actually the brand name of Nerf may actually be super strong? I don't know, in the Philippines or something.
Yeah, we have done extensive market research, and there is definitely a global appeal. With even in Asia, that at least I didn't think that Nerf would be so big brand, but actually, it is globally appealing, and but of course the main market still is the US and North America where the brand originated from. So, but there's multiple big countries where the brand is recognized.
And kind of, I know, looking ahead to what do you think is going to happen? You know, we say you've got these sort of £800 sort of gorillas sort of dominating the market, although there's another, say, like 15 or so in the top 100. You know, obviously those games are still fairly new, aren't they? Sort of you know, maybe 2 years, something like that. You know, do you think those games are going to continue to sort of dominate that market, or as they get older, will that provide more opportunities for people to come in with more? You know, I guess kind of you know, innovation and more,
yeah,
because new games are always exciting, aren't they? You think this is something new that people are always interested.
Yeah, definitely. I think for sure they are gonna be there most likely for a long time and gonna be one of those top dogs. But I definitely see something like, you know, when Battle Royale game, like it actually kind of like took over the market, and it was like an innovation and that game. So something in that sense, that some small tweak to the gameplay that is kind of like is able to make it go viral and find a massive audiences, and then kind of like disrupt those crazy live ops machines that those big games nowadays are. So that's definitely and something that I would kind of like see or is actually at the moment brewing kind of like many games on soft launch, and it has been on PC side for a longer period of time. This kind of like Escape from Tarkov type of survival shooter games that kind of like combine a little bit of PvE shooting and PvP shooting together, and has that little bit of Battle Royale element also. So there are actually quite a few of those in soft launch at the moment from also quite a big companies. Like I think NetEase at least has some of those under works and so on. So that could be something. PUBG already tried. They had this Metro Royale mode in it for a while, and it was quite interesting tryout for them having this kind of like a survival shooter. So I would assume at least some of those type of games would kind of like find some new market share. But then again, like will it be one of those most likely big companies, or like because there are already, the idea is out there, and it's in that sense so not so revolutionary as after Battle Royale was, but that remains to be seen. Something that I would like to see on mobile is something like, you know, shooter that utilizes even more like PvE stuff, so like Destiny on mobile, that type of a shooter. I feel, I know Shadowgun tried it kind of like years ago, but wasn't so successful. But that's something that I'm personally waiting to see also.
Look for Nitro Games.
Oh yeah, okay, that's good.
Well, there's one definitely one thing that we have been looking is like this boomer shooter kind of genre, which is very growing in the Steam or the PC side of things. That like playing with the old strong elements with the original shooters like Doom or Quake, and having that kind of same level of experience and being able to bring that to mobile. And obviously, there's multiple avenues how to do it and how to like make revenue with those kind of games. But that's something that we are looking at.
And I guess kind of more generally, we have kind of Apex Legends Mobile and Valorant. Presumably
there's a lot of those
at some stage.
big IPs and titles at the moment, like coming next year in shooter space as well. And I know like Ubisoft is creating a Division mobile version, and there are multiple ones at the moment bubbling under, also like with big IPs or big kind of like console PC IPs. So let's see what the next year looks like then when those gets released. Are they able to actually get market share from those behemoths?
Now, I think it's always interesting, isn't it? Is that you have these sort of basic gameplay sort of mechanics, I guess you call them, like shooting, which sort of, you know, the one great thing about a shooter is basically everyone can turn up and vaguely know what they do from second to second, even if they don't know the sort of the meta of what they're doing. And I guess same thing for match 3. And it's always surprising how game designers can always take those really enjoyable sort of moment gameplay mechanics and actually then build other sort of stuff, hybridization or whatever, build all that around those and come up with these sort of things that seem really crazy but actually sort of work really well in the mobile situation. Cool. Well, thank you very much, Jukka and Erno. That was really a good discussion on what's going on with shooters in mobile. And we should say actually, when's the game out? Do you have a date yet?
Which game?
The Nerf one, the Nerf Arena game.
We don't have a date yet, so it's currently in soft launch in Finland and in Canada on both iOS and Android. So if you're living in those countries, please take a look. It's awesome. Cool.
Good. Excellent. Don't forget that plug in. And thanks. So thanks to both our experts, and thanks to you for listening and watching. Don't forget that every month we are talking to the people who are deep into the mobile game sector. We're looking at the big trends, and we're looking at how people are addressing those and how they're coming up with cool products that will be enjoyed by millions of players. So please subscribe through your usual channel, and thanks for watching this one, and come back next time.